So thank you for inviting me to be here today. I just really love to be here to be able to talk in this kind of a small stage and be able to be involved with you. So guys, if you have any questions, just ask him for the microphone and interrupt me anytime, because this is more about being like a conversation and talking a bit. And what I'm going to talk about today is about my personal work. And I'm a commercial photographer. For those of you that know me, I'm based in Barcelona. I have a studio in Barcelona. And what I do there is to help companies to sell their products, and from doing like football players to like all kind of different commercial photography to help companies to sell products. Some of my clients are Samsung, Powerade, Women's Health, this kind of stuff. But what I was invited to talk here today is about my personal work, and more specifically about what personal work is. And to me, personal work is the way of keeping your motivation on business, because the job is boring at the end. It's always the same. At the beginning, it sounds really cool when you're just shooting models and lingerie and like football players and superstars, but then at the end, it gets monotonous. It gets exactly the same as any other job. So personal work is super important, and to me is the way to keep myself motivated, but especially to keep offering my clients the 100% of me, so I don't become just lazy and boring on my job, because it's always the same job. You know, when you work for a brand like Powerade, for example, and you take pictures of athletes for them, and then you have to work next week for Samsung, and you have to take pictures of athletes for Samsung, there is no way to make completely different things if you're not motivated with your job, if you don't love what you do. So let me turn on the presentation that I'm going to do for today. This is my personal project as it is today. It's been ongoing for the last 5 years. I will get in detail into it, but it's so far these 11 pictures that's what is my personal project, you know. So let me get the presentation going. Whoops. There you go. So my personal project is called The Elders. The Elders is the name I gave to this project when I arrived to this point, like in 2017. Because my personal project started in 2013, but I didn't know I started a personal project. I was just doing my own thing that I like at any time, and I never thought. But a personal project doesn't make any sense if you don't know anything about the person behind it. So let me talk a little bit about me and about how I got into this of photography. So the first thing is that back in 2008, if I don't remember wrong, I decided to quit my job. I was a salesman trainer in a multinational Japanese company at Barcelona, and I was an amateur photographer for a couple of years already. So I decided that my job, which was good and was really well paid, it was not really fulfilling me. My job was being in a suit from Monday. At 6 a.m. in the morning, I will take an airplane to somewhere in Spain, and I will just train people there for selling printers, like high volume printers, nothing to do with photography. And Friday evening, I will come back to Barcelona, spend the weekend at home, and then Monday morning, once again, doing the same. So I loved my job. I liked it. It was a good job. It was really well paid, and I could not spend any money. So I spent all my money in cameras and toys of photography because I did not have anything to spend it. But at some point, I decided that maybe there was something else for me in the world. So I decided to just take on my passion or my hobby, which was the photography, and try to give it a different sense. And one of the things that I knew I wanted to do in my life was traveling. So I said, okay, so why don't you become a travel photographer? That would be cool, no? So then I just started using my sales skills, and I contacted a couple of agencies that were selling pictures for magazines and selling pictures for websites and stuff like that. That was before the micro stock existed, so there was still a market for that. Nowadays, it's kind of impossible to be in there. So yeah, I wrote to a company in Portugal, which is travelimages.com. It is one of the big agencies of travel images in Europe. And I told them, hey, look, I'm going to be traveling the world with my camera, and I'm going to take pictures. So if you would like to put them on your website and sell them, it would be great. They asked me for my portfolio, and they checked that the pictures were good enough and stuff. And they were like, OK, John, so just keep sending me stuff from wherever you are, and we will try to move it and see what we do. And they paid me a commission out of it. So I started traveling. And first I went to India. I took a one-way ticket to India. I was not sure. I quit my job. I take a one-way ticket to India, and I was not sure how long I would be there. I had no boundings at home. I had no relationship. I had no flat. I had nothing at home that it was a problem for me. So I was free to leave. It was kind of easy. But I quit a full-time job in a very well-paid situation, so that was a bit complicated. So I took a one-way ticket to India, and then I went to Nepal, and then I went back to India. I got all my equipment stolen that I just bought in Nepal 2 weeks ago. So I got about 7,000 euros of equipment stolen in India. So I decided to quit photography, and I said, okay, screw photography. I'm going to Thailand to surf. So I went to Thailand, and I spent 1 week in a beach without camera. It was the first time I felt really good, like, wow, I don't have to worry that my camera is sitting in the hotel and I'm actually enjoying the beach, you know, because I did not do rafting in Nepal because I had my camera with me. I did not want it to get wet. And I did not do I stopped doing many things on my travels because I had my camera with me. So I was that week in there near Phuket, just enjoying the beach and surfing in the water, swimming in the ocean by myself. It was really nice. And a week later, I just took a flight to Singapore to buy a camera because I could not live without it anymore. So it lasted for a week, my photography quitting. So then I went to Indonesia for an assignment from the travel company, like the travel images agency. They told me that there was this festival. If I could take some pictures of that they were sure that they would be able to sell them. So I went there. I was supposed to be there for a weekend, and I ended up staying 3 months in Indonesia, in Bali. It was really amazing. I love the place, and I love the surfing, so it was a really good combination. But then I decided I wanted to continue traveling, so I went back to Malaysia, and then back to Thailand, and then I went to Laos because they did not let me go to Myanmar, to Burma, because the borders were closed at that time. So then I went to Cambodia, and then I went to Vietnam. And then finally I got tired after 23 months of traveling, and I decided to go back home. And then I decided that I would just go back home and do something else, because I was tired of being a travel photographer at that point. It became my daily job. So at the end, I got monotonous, like on any job that you have. So I decided to go back home, and then I arrived home, and after a couple of days being at home, I said, okay, I have to find a job. At that point, I was not a professional photographer, I would say. I was making my money out of photography, but I was not sure that I will do photography on the long term. I was not sure that my living was going to come from photography. So I remember having a conversation with my mom and telling her, okay, so I'm just going to look for a job in the sales, like in the sales field, like to become a salesman again, or like training salesman. It was what I was doing before. So I got a suit to go to an interview, and I was not able to leave home. I was like, no, I'm not going to get in a suit again. So I decided I was not wanting to do this. I never went to that interview, and I decided I wanted to do photography. Somehow, some way, but photography. I knew I did not want to live abroad again, far away from my family and far away from everything. So it had to do something that had to do with photography in Spain, in Barcelona. So then I started into commercial photography. At the end, it was a logical step. I had a marketing background, that I was doing a lot of sales, and like I was good at selling, and I was good at teaching people how to sell. And I like photography. So commercial photography is exactly about that. It's exactly about helping people to sell through images. So what I do most of the time is assisting companies on how to sell better and do the images for that. But many times they ask me for my opinion. John, how do you think we should target this to our clients? Because I have this background. So it really helps when, I don't know, a company like a clothes company, it doesn't have to be one of the big brands, because obviously there is much more involved in that, but one of the small companies, like a jewelry company, came to me the other day and they were like, we want to make an online shop. How do we do this, John? Like, I'm the photographer, I'm not supposed to tell you how to sell, but because I have this background, they come to me. So at the end, it's like an asset that I use to get clients. And my commercial photography started like working with Samsung, because I had an agency in England, and that helped me because I was bilingual, English, Spanish. So they came to Spain for shooting this agency, and they looked for a Spanish photographer, but they wanted someone who speaks English, so they got in contact with me. And then I was able to get in them, and then I used my sales skills to grow inside the agency. And they ended up giving me like not only Powerade client, but they also gave me Samsung. And we started working not only in Spain, but all over Europe. And I started doing like commercial photography. So like products, magazine covers, DVD covers, football players, athletes. This is Teddy Riner, is the world champion of judo. with the Olympic medal from 2012, and then more DVD covers, and more DVD covers, and more magazine covers, and more DVD covers. That's pretty much what I do for a living. That's what makes me pay my bills. So the thing is that this is not what really passionates me. And we're back again on the map. This is what really passionates me, and this is what really strikes me. So I realized that I wanted to do something that was keeping my passion up. So my daily job, of course, is fun, it's interesting, always is nice to meet VIPs and to have football players and work with them and everything. It's all so nice. It's much better than many other worst things that people has to do for a living. So we're really lucky, but it's not my passion. So I had this feeling that my pictures from my old travels, they were not good enough. So when I was seeing my pictures that were in the magazines or the covers of DVDs, I was like, wow, these pictures are aesthetically beautiful and they are striking and they're just like, wow. And my travel images, they are more like a photojournalist. They're like, more like, I don't know, more like natural images. They're beautiful, they're nice landscapes, there's nice people, but these people in my pictures doesn't look as important as people in the cover of a magazine. So I started thinking, why was that? And I came to the conclusion that it was about me. It was about how did I do the pictures of Fernando Torres, the football player, or how did I do the pictures of a random person when I was in Nepal. I did it in a different way. With Fernando Torres, we had the production. We had the whole lining, we had the people running around him, we had equipment, we had all of that stuff. And with that woman in Nepal, I did not. So I thought maybe I could find a way to combine it. I could do the pictures I do for magazines of random anonymous people in the countries that I love. So then I had this opportunity where I could put this into practice. And that was 2013. 2013, I came back from traveling in 2010, so there was a gap of 3 years between that. So I was 3 years working as a professional commercial photographer before I actually realized that I had the need to travel again. And then I got married with my wife. And, oh, something fell from the camera. So I got married to my wife, and we decided to do a honeymoon in Nepal. She never been in Nepal. I was in Nepal already. She's a very sportive person as well. And I was like, honey, would you mind if I take some flashes with me, and when we are there, we hire a translator and an assistant, and we do some production in our honeymoon? And she was so nice to say yes, because yeah, she's really in love with me and with my job, and she's really happy that I'm passionate about it, because it makes me happy and that makes her happy. So she was okay with it. So the first thing we did, I did for the first time a photography project in Nepal. And that was my first work with the Sherpas in the Everest Trail. So our honeymoon was just a bit different to most of people's honeymoons. It was actually climbing the Everest, but not the mountain itself, but going to the base camp. And then we just went to Nepal, and then we flew to Kathmandu, and from Kathmandu we just started walking, took a bus for a couple of hours and started walking up the mountain until we reached Namche Bazaar, and then going up to the top to Tengbokche, and we were going to keep up. We did not reach our destination because there was an avalanche and people died and stuff, so we could not keep going up. But the truth is that on the project, on the way there was incredible subjects. There was incredible people, because you know, Namche Bazaar is like the capital of the tourists in the Everest Trail. And basically everyone flies to Lukla, which is like very close by. And then they just walk to Namche Bazaar, and from there they start doing the Everest trek. But the trekkers, they only relate to the trekkers. They only meet in these kind of hotels and cafes that are made for them, that you can have a banana pancake 3,000 meters in the highness, in the middle of nowhere in Nepal, because the whole business is related to people going to the Everest base camp. It's like kind of like a tourist spot. It's crazy, but it's like a tourist spot. So everyone that goes there, they only relate to people like them. But there are local people living there. They are not only Sherpas, but they are all the people that they live there. So for example, this woman, like, I don't know if my laser works here, but this woman here, she's a 90-something-year-old woman. She lives in Namche Bazaar, and her son had to leave the mountains, is Sherpa as well. He had to leave to go to Kathmandu to work in construction for like $45 a month or something like that, and sends her some money so she can make a living. So she lives in the same village that thousands of tourists go every year to go through, and they spend a couple of nights to acclimate up there, but no one talks to her. So I hired a translator to come with us the whole time. And that translator, I was asking him to talk to people, to introduce me to people, just to meet them. The same way I used to do when I was traveling by myself, when I fell in love with travel photography, because I loved taking portraits of people. And I just talked to her, and at the beginning when we approached her, she was scared. She didn't know what the hell these guys want. Like, no one talked to me in years, except my neighbors and the local people, and all of a sudden this tourist guy with the North Face equipment is coming to me, and it's trying to get a guy to translate so I can talk to him. So she was scared. She didn't know what was going on. She thought it was wrong. But then my translator explained her, like, yeah, this young couple, they just want to get to know better to you. They just want to know you. So they want to talk to you. And then her face changed totally. She was so impressed. She was so amazed that she just grabbed me on the arm and she just pulled me into her house. It was a tiny little house, super dirty. And we just go upstairs, like a really, really high step stairs to go on the second floor where she lived. I didn't know how she could climb them. And then she just served us this tea in like dirty glasses in the floor of her house. She started swiping around the house so we could sit there. And we spent, I think, 3 hours talking with her. Just sitting with her, and she was explaining us how proud she was that her son got a job in Kathmandu, and how good it was, and how much it changed. Imagine, 90-year-old woman always lived her life in Namche Bazaar. 90 years ago, there was nothing there. Like, people did not even discover the Everest yet. So it was like nothing, and she was there, and she could explain so many stories. I can tell you, not very loud, but it was much more interesting than Fernando Torres or any famous people I ever been shooting with. It was incredibly more interesting. So in that trip in the Everest, I did about 10 subjects. So this is some of the photos I did. I have many more photos, but at the same time, my wife, when we came back, she told me that was the best holiday she ever had in her life. She doesn't like photography. She hates it. She doesn't want anything to do with photography. But the level of connection that we developed with the people that was there, it was completely different to any other ways of making holidays. So 2014, actually in Nepal, in our honeymoon, my wife got pregnant. So next year we had a baby. So in 2014, we could not travel because the baby was just born in August. So that's always when I can travel because of my job. So in 2015, I did my China project. That was completely different this time. I was traveling to make photos. My wife came with me, my son, 1-year-old, came with us, but I was like, the purpose of the travel was to take the photos. And I investigated and I found this really interesting man, the fisherman of Yangshuo, which is a fisherman that trained the birds so they fish for him. Like about 10 years ago of that, when I was living in England, not 10 years, maybe 5 years before that, when I was living in England, I saw an advert of the Hong Kong Bank, right? When England and Hong Kong was still like a colony of England, or maybe not like at that time, but there was advertising on TV of Hong Kong Bank. And there was this advertising where there was a fisherman, like an English fisherman, on a lake, and he was throwing his line, and he was not getting anything. And all of a sudden, a guy looking like this guy goes next to him on this advert, and throws a bird on the air. The bird gets the fish, brings it to him, and drops the fish in the basket, and he gives him a piece of fish. And then the advert of the bank was like, whenever you go to a foreign country, trust the locals. Right? So that was the advert for the bank. And that's the first time I heard about the fishing with cormorants, these birds. So then I researched it. Is there any fishing with cormorants left in the world? And I found that there was some in Korea and some in China, in the Yangshuo area. So I looked online, and I saw that there were some photographers that did some photos of this guy and his brother. They were the oldest fishermen and the last ones that were using cormorants trained to fish. So I told my wife, with a photo of a Russian photographer, I had a photo of the brother of this guy, and I told my wife, okay, this summer we're going to China to find this guy. I only knew that he lived in a village that was called Xingping, which is in the middle of nowhere and the north of Guangzhou. Like, it takes about a week to reach. You know, it's the middle of Liangshu. Now I think they built a new train and it's much easier to access, but before you had to fly away and then take like 3 or 4 days bus to reach that place. And I told my wife, okay, he lives in Xinping, it cannot be so big. So if we go to Xinping with a picture, they will be able to point at us to him. So I said, I'm looking for this man. So we did that, and we did that project. And that was the first year that I had my medium format camera at that point. It was a phase 1 camera, but it was an old phase 1 camera. The screen was only 480 pixels. It was a 40 megapixel camera, but you could not see on the screen if it was in focus or not. So I always worked with my laptop connected to my camera. And I remember this shooting there, when I met this man, after meeting him, I went there, I got a translator, he found him, we had a meeting with him, and then after 3 hours I proposed him, hey, I would like to take some pictures of you, would you like that? And then he said yes. So the next day we met at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we've been shooting until 7 o'clock when the sun went down, and that's where we got these pictures. So I was working with my phase 1, I was not able to see if my pictures were in focus. I was so nervous. I knew in front of my eyes I had one of the best pictures I will have in my life. And I was not sure if it was in focus, sharp or not sharp. If anyone works with medium format, it's really difficult to work, much more than with a DSLR, because you have one focus point, you cannot move it, and the fall of the focus is much sharper, so it's really difficult to work. So you either nail the focus or you screw the picture. So I was so nervous, I didn't have my laptop, obviously, and I was like, oh, you know what, screw it. You did that 1,000 times with football players, under the pressure of marketing directors, under the pressure of creative directors, and you never screwed it up. Why you should screw it up now that you're alone in the middle of China? And even if you screw it up, no one else than you will know. So just keep on going. So I just forgot about it, and I started focusing. And I remember arriving to the hotel where my wife and my son were, and she was like, did you get good pictures? I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Let me put them in the computer and see. You know? So I put them in the computer, and straight away I knew. I remember that day from the hotel, I uploaded the picture on Facebook. There was this one here. And I knew I got probably the best picture I will ever take in my life, because I'm really, really proud of that pictures, and I really love them. But again, I found myself enjoying the best time of my photography life, photographing someone random that is no one, that no one knows, in a random place in the middle of nowhere, around the world, a completely different culture, of someone that has more to tell and more story to tell than any VIP person I photographed before. And of course, it requires a lot of equipment. I use external flashes. I use an assistant holding it. I have to have a translator. So sometimes I have to have 2 translators because they don't speak a direct language. So you need like translator from the dialect to the language, and then from the language to English. So it's complicated, but the result is not comparable to what I did before. So things were taking shape, and then after that, the next year, 2016, I decided to go to Myanmar. At that point, I was already researching for subjects that were interesting for what I thought would be making me happy, taking photos of old people with a really strong cultural background and that is passing away. Like backgrounds that are not really going to be there when my kids are older. I have 2 kids now. They are 3 and 1.5 years old. When my son is 18 years old or 20 years old, there will be no fishermen left in China. So I thought it was very interesting, this point of view, to be able to take pictures of something that is going to disappear. It's just kind of like a concept, no more deepness than that. So I went to Myanmar, where I found that there is this woman that when they were a child, they were tattooed on their faces. This is the tattooed woman of the Tien state in Myanmar. It's quite a remote area. You not get there with any commercial flights. You need to take a 4x4 and get into the mountains. But basically, this woman, the story comes like from many, many years ago. There was like, when the kings of Asia, like centuries ago, they thought that the woman from the Tien state was the most beautiful woman in the world. So they sent people there to steal young ladies to put them in their harems. So that evolved, and the mothers, to stop them from kidnapping their kids, they decided to make tattoos on the face so they did not look pretty anymore. So they did that, and it seems it's supposed to be worked, and then it became a cultural treat. So each tribe will have different patterns, and nowadays there is about 5 or 6 different tribes, and they have different patterns. But on the 1970s, when the military government of the Myanmar, of Burma at that time, got into power, they thought that this was crazy, and they forbid it. So they got all the tattoo women and put them in jail. So no one else was tattooing kids anymore because it was not legal. So basically nowadays, there is about 200 women left with tattoos on their face, and they are all over 60 years old. So in 20 years, there will be no tattooed woman of the chin state anymore. And that will become history. There will be no single woman left. It took me 2 trips. Later, I went back to Myanmar to find out that there is still some illegal tattoo artists doing it in like very small areas, very remote areas. So there is still some that is going to continue. But if there is 200 about left now, imagine when these ones are gone because of the age, and only the ones left will be the young ones that are being tattooed. That will be really rare. And actually, the young ones don't want to be tattooed, and they are more free nowadays, so they don't get it. So I thought it was a really interesting part as well. And I've been twice there now, and the 2 times I got really incredible portraits of this woman, and they explain you stories of how they were tattooed when they were 9 years old and when they were 12 years old, and they still remember the pain. Or this woman, for example, she was so proud of it because it was a cultural trait that she wanted to be tattooed. Nowadays, they don't want to be tattooed, but she wanted to be it. And she even did her neck, and that was only done by the most brave girls. So to prove that she was a brave girl and a strong woman, she just tattooed her neck as well. So they were explaining you how proud they were and how disappointed they were that their grandchild now they don't want to be tattooed, or their children they didn't want to be tattooed. And they really explain you with great sadness, because for them, it's something that defines them. But for the new generations, it's something that doesn't. Actually, later on, I went as well to Laos, and I went as well to Myanmar again. And in the second time I was in Myanmar, I met a girl that was 28 years old, and she had the tattoos on her face. That girl was absolutely repudiated by society. She did not find someone to marry. They used to bully her in school, and she was like the last person that everyone wanted to spend time with. And just because her mom forced her to get the tattoos. So imagine how hard it is for them. So they decided not to do it. So as I said, I did some more trips, smaller trips, but the break-on came in 2017 when I decided that I wanted to do one more trip that was very important to me on the same line as the others. And when I found my subject, that was the eagle hunter from Mongolia, from the Altai Mountains, I knew it was fitting my project perfectly. There was no shape of project yet. So when I found my subject before taking these photos, I thought, okay, John, you're always photographing old people that have a very strong cultural background that is going to disappear. This fits. It's just like you did not realize for the last 5 years you've been doing a project yourself without knowing. And I decided, okay, maybe we should put it together and just make a selection of what I think is the really photos that strike, the people that strikes, because it's not only about the photos, but about the people itself. So I decided to call it The Elders. And that's when the project became a project. And on the last 2 years, actually, I was able to get a sponsorship for my own projects, my personal projects. It was like independent projects. I sold it to Olympus, and I sold it like, look, I'm just going to Myanmar to take photos. And I'm going to do photos like the ones I did in China, the ones I did in Nepal. And they were like, oh, we would like to do these photos with our camera instead of with a phase one or with a Nikon or with whatever. I said, sure, why not? You pay? I'm happy to. So there was no project. But now, when I sell it or when I show it to people like you, I just talk to you about The Elders. Because to me, it became just that project. And now, everything in my personal work is focused on that. The greatest thing of my personal project is that there is no limit on it. I'm going to keep researching for individuals that have a strong background, that are going to disappear, and that no one else is telling their story. And I'm just going to keep doing that. I'm just going to keep going and traveling and looking for these subjects. Last year, as I said, we were sponsored by Olympus. We were, I say, me. But I was sponsored by Olympus. And I was able to bring a drone for the first time on one of my trips. And I made this video. So this is what I do on my personal work. The most important part is that you're passionate about your job, about what you do, sorry. So I hear many photographers, when they are doing speeches and stages and stuff, they say something like, so whenever you choose what you're going to do in photography, you better love it because you're going to do it for your whole life. I don't agree at all with this. I changed my profession in photography a few times already. I was a travel photographer, then I am a commercial photographer. But as much as I like this kind of the work, it's work. You know, what you have to be passionate about is about whatever really thrills you. I cannot make a living out of this. I hope I could make a living. Hopefully, sooner or later, I would just be paid just to do what I love. But the truth is that this is my project, and I do it for myself, because that's what I really love to do. And it's the way I keep sane, and I keep being 100% into my business when I'm doing business. So if you want to do photography, it's good. But if you think that you can make lots of money doing newborn photography, which is something that you like, but it's not your passion to do baby photography, that's fine. Pay your bills. Pay your bills so you can pay yourself the things that you really love. Why not? It's a good way to do it. And the funny thing is that this is something I always been doing for myself. I never did it for anyone. I never exposed this. I sold it to Olympus, and they starting to use the images, but that's been many years, and for the last year and a half or so, they're using the images, and they are not really like seen out there. We're not putting them anywhere. But I started to get like recognitions from my work, because on 2017, Hasselblad decided that my portraits were mentioned to be finalists on the Hasselblad Masters, which is like ridiculously the most incredible contest and the most quality contest in the world. And they nominated me to be one of the top 10 portrait photographers in the world. And I was like, what? Are you serious? But the fact that they have tell me that this is good, it's helping me to keep me motivated on my own project. I'm much more proud that they chosen my personal work to nominate me one of the best portrait photographers in the world, according to them, than they have chosen any cover of football player or any of my commercial photography, because my commercial photography is not what I can do. It's what my client lets me do. Most of the times, I'm limited on what I can do because of the client limitations, because of what they don't think that it's going to be commercial enough, or what they don't think it's going to be cool enough. But on my personal work, even when I commission it for brands, like Olympus pays me for it, or Manfrotto pays me for it, or anyone pays me for my job, I have full control. They only have the right to use the images, but I decide what, when, where, and how. They have no control on anything. They have no control because it's my project. And it's not going to change in any way. They can put as much money on the table as they want. If they put a lot of money, I will do a project for them. But my personal project would still be mine. So if you keep working on your passion, I can hear it myself when I talk about my own project. It's completely different than when you will see me talking about the LEDs from Falcon Eyes in the central stage at 2:30. Obviously, that's not my passion. This is my passion. So you can tell on the way you talk about it. So to me, the way I work on my personal project is the way to keep myself being 100% professional to my clients, because every year I take 1.5 months and I go away and I stop looking at my emails and I stop answering calls and I just do it for me. I usually take my family with me. Like last year we had like a very young baby, my daughter Maya, so we did not take her to Mongolia, but this year she's coming to Mongolia. My son 3 years old, my daughter 1.5-year-old, my wife and me, we're going all together to have a really nice trip for 1.5 months to Asia. And this year we'll probably go to Mongolia again, because I like to go back and I bring them the pictures. And I bring them the pictures printed in Chromalux. Chromalux is a material, it's sublimated in aluminum, and it lasts for 1,000 years without losing color or getting wet. It cannot be burned and it cannot be made wet because it's aluminum. So basically, generations over generations will have the pictures that we took of them when they disappear. So that's my way of paying back to these people, just for letting me take a part of them, and then I just try to go back and I bring them the pictures. So this year, I'm going back to Mongolia to bring the pictures back to 10 Elkan, and at the same time to do another project in the north of Mongolia, in the frontier to Russia, where there is the community. It's called the Satan community, and they live really, really up in the mountains. They are completely forgotten from everything else. It takes about 6 days to reach them. You have to ride a reindeer to reach them. And they don't have any animals, because nothing lives there, no yaks, nothing. They only have reindeers. So they use reindeer milk, reindeer skin, reindeer meat. They only live from the reindeers. So they use them as horses, and you see the kids riding white reindeers in the snow. And that's where I'm going this year to do my project. And then I'm going to see Tenelcan to bring him the pictures again. And then I'm going to spend some time with my family in the Philippines looking for something else. So this 1.5 months allows me to come back with full batteries and take on my commercial projects with more energy than ever. And just because I know that when my client chooses me to take the pictures for his campaign, he's paying for this. He's paying for me to allow to take 1.5 months off to go to Asia and do what I love in my life. So I take my commercial assignments as a job that pays for my personal work, and that's how I commit to my clients to give them the 100%. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would love to talk to you about. I think we have a few minutes for questions, right?
Yeah. We have a few minutes for questions.
So if you have any questions, take advantage of this small space. You can ask me anything related to anything you want.
Are there questions?
No questions?
Yes.
Lynn she has a question.
Yeah. Hi. You said that.
A bit louder.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You said that this first woman was afraid when you approached her.
The first, sorry, I cannot hear you very well. I will get closer to you.
The first woman approached you. No, the first woman that you approached in Nepal.
Yeah.
She was afraid of you, and
totally.
The key word seemed to be that you asked her. You told her you wanted to get to know her. Yeah.
I explain you how this works, because the whole logistics is a bit complicated. And you get better and better at it as well. Like at the beginning, I just used to approach people and try to take pictures of them. Like that's what I used to do before I traveled with equipment. But then I just steal photos, right? You just get your long lens and you just see a woman passing by there and you just get a couple of shots. But then I thought that when I'm shooting my subjects in a commercial environment, I'm not stealing photos from them. They are giving me 100% attention. Like, when you're working with a football player or a model, she's looking at you. So I thought if I want to get the same pictures with the same strength, I'm not going to be able to do it by stealing the photos. I will have to just connect with them to a whole different level. And one of the things that I use in my job is to try to meet my subjects before I have to photography them. So kind of like breaking the ice or whatever you want to call it. And so when I arrive to commercial shooting and I have there like a VIP or a model or whatever, I get my team, my assistants, to start preparing the equipment, and I just take a coffee with my asset, with my subject. When we start working, it makes a massive difference. It's not anymore that guy with the camera, it's John. It's not anymore like this guy that I don't know. It's just that guy that talked to me. Like, for example, when I work with Chelsea players, I work with Fernando Torres and Mata, which are Spanish as well. So the fact that we arrived there and, hey, Fernando, ¿cómo estás? In Spanish, and it just got him really loose, because he was like, wow, it's not one more photographer. It's actually a guy that is from my own country. We both are in a different place. We are the only two speaking Spanish. They're finding connections with you. So I thought I had to do something similar with my subjects in Asia. So the point was, first of all, I wanted to talk to them to know them. I just don't want to take their picture. I want to know who they are. And I haven't written a book. I'm not a photojournalist, so I don't have any intentions of telling their stories. They are nice to know for me, but I have no intention to share their stories in any time. Maybe one day I decide to make a book, but I know it's very interesting for everyone to see that photo and to know the story behind it. But to me, it's all about the beauty of the image. So I want to know them just for a personal reason. I want to know, but as well because maybe he's an asshole. And I don't want to have a portfolio picture in my elders of an asshole. I want to have people that I really respect. And because, the elders is a word that talks about old people in a very respectful way. So to me, if I'm going to have these pictures printed in my studio or stuff, I want to have pictures of people that I think they are worth something. So I want to know them before I even decide if they have to be my subject or not. It looks a bit egocentric or egoistic, but not everyone is valid to be in my elders project, you know? Like, it has to be a good person as well. So I just talked to them, and I guess my translator, they know, you know, they're not stupid. They are like foreigner and stuff, like from different countries, but they're not stupid. So when you approach them, they know that if you want something from them, there will be something in exchange. So for them, it's very good. You know, that's my way of giving back to the communities. I pay my subjects. When I decide, after I talk to them, and I decide, hey, I want to hire you for a photo shooting. How does that sound to you? And I show them videos from other shootings, from other people similar to them, so they can feel what it will be like. Because I tell them, this is not going to be a matter of 2 minutes. You're going to be hours with me. And we're going to be working with external equipment. So I want to hire you. So I guess my translators, they already know that there is probably going to be something for them. So they tell them, hey, talk to this guy, because it may be good for you. You know? They don't know how much I'm going to pay, because I don't tell them until they are translating my words. But at the same time, it's important that they get to know that there is something in there from them. Just imagine that you are just walking on the street of Amsterdam, and all of a sudden a guy that looks like an Arabic sheikh comes to you and is like, hey, do you want to take pictures with me? You'll be like, hey, what the fuck, you know, get away. So, but if he's like, hey, I think that you look really interesting and I'm very interested in your culture, I would like to have a coffee with you. Maybe you have it. You know, especially if you don't have anything else to do because you live in a remote area and you're not busy. So that's the way we try to connect with them. Like, I find the translator to be absolutely necessary. I'm thinking on getting now, there is these kind of things that you put in your ears and they translate directly, because there is definitely a problem on the translation. There is a handicap there because translators don't always translate what I want, what I say. They sometimes shape it. Some of them because they're just trying to make it sound nice for the person, which is acceptable, but I really try to work with no tourist guides. For example, in Mongolia, my translator is an English teacher from a school. I just contact the local school where I'm going to be, and I say, who's your English teacher? That. Okay, and then I just email her like, hey, I'm a photographer, I'm coming here, I want to hire you. Me, I'm not a guide tour. Why don't you hire a guide tour? No, I don't want a guide tour, I want you. Because I want someone that gives me the same translation that you will have in a conference in the UN. You know, like someone that says the same exact words. Because otherwise it's not me talking to you. It's your interpretation of me talking to you. So it's a bit complicated, but the result, it totally pays back. And it's not expensive, because what I pay, which is usually the next question, is how much you pay your subjects. I try to find a rule of thumb where I make them their time worth, but that I don't try to not alterate their lifestyle. Because if you go, like, let's go again to that example of the guy that comes to you and wants to take photos of you, and he comes and is like, hey, I'm going to pay you 3 million if you just do the photos. It will change your life. It will change your life for good maybe, but maybe not. If it's not 3 million, if it's like 50,000 euros, it will be great, but then it will not really change much in your life. So if they pay you 3,000 euros, it will pay your mortgage. It will pay your mortgage, but that's it, yeah? But I mean, like, I try not to go there and put money on the table. So I told them, usually when I'm talking to them, I find out what they're doing. The women's in Myanmar, for example, they sewing and they selling on the markets clothes. So I ask her, like, she's like, yeah, I do these kind of things when I'm talking to her. And she's like, yeah, I'm doing this kind of like dresses or these kind of like skirts and like this. And how much do you sell this for? Oh, I sell it for $5. Okay, perfect. How long does it take you to make this? So it takes me 2 days to make it. Right. So that means that you're making about $50 a month. So I pay them 1 week's salary for 2 hours of time. I'm like, look, I'm going to pay you what you make in a week for being with me for 2 hours, full attention. But I want your full attention because I pay models back at home. Why I should not pay models in destination, you know? It doesn't take any value out of it for me. It just makes it more valuable because they dedicate me their time. Sometimes it happened in Nepal, for example, that one woman did not want to do the photos anymore. She said yes for the money, and then after we started, after 3 minutes, she said, no, are we finished or something like that, you know? And I was like, no, we're not finished. I mean, we did not even start. And then she was like, yeah, but you got enough pictures already. I was like, no, I don't. So it's okay. I don't want to work in it. That's an asshole for me, you know? So here's your money. Bye-bye. You know, and that's no problem. At the end, we end up paying them $20, $40, $50. Depends on the country, depends on how much they earn. If I decide to do a project of the elders in Japan, maybe I will have to pay $300 or $1,000, I don't know. It's not so much about how much money it is, it's about how much money it means for them. So yeah, that's pretty much how it works.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Do you have any other questions, guys? Just keep your passion, keep trying to, just keep your passion. Just try to find something that you really like in photography, because as they say, you will be doing photos for a long time in your life. You can get very easily unmotivated by it and start just taking photos, like not creating images, you know, and you have to try. You owe that to your clients, that every time you face a client, it's like the first time for you, because they're paying for the photos the same that the first person that ever hired you. So if you lose your passion, you're not being fair to your customers. And if you need to do that to keep your passion going, that's a really nice way to keep it going. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Give Jon an applause. Thank you very much. Thanks for your passion and telling stories, Jon.